I'll call to order the budget meeting for December 5th, 2019. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones? Mrs. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Hoffman? Mr. Farrell?
Here.
Mr. Hellinger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Farrell. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Have we, yeah, we've heard from Corey.
I was
No.
just gonna text him.
No.
Okay. We're going to continue the review of the city manager's proposed 2020 budget.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Riggle. Members of council, just a couple of one housekeeping item. We have placed an order for Surface Pros. This is a follow-up to a request for council members. We're trying to get it expedited order, but should be within the next 2 weeks. So we'll keep you posted on that, and our CIO, Susie, will coordinate that with you once they arrive. So that's item one, and then just item two is just the format for tonight is prior to the presentations by directors. I've asked Alicia Valone, our budget management analyst, just to review the recap that she put at everybody's place. This is something we discussed on Monday night. This is just a review of what some of the questions that were asked and reporting back on information, and we can then discuss that at some point during the meeting. So, Alicia.
Okay, so one of the first takeaways was Councilman Hellinger, you had asked about the bike path that would get people off of 23. So we put together a preliminary estimate for you. You should have two maps, I believe. One is the full path, and the other one is the preliminary estimate for the section from Bruce Road to Pinecrest. The recommendation was for a gravel path there. I think it was about $58,000. And you can see his assumptions. It's a preliminary estimate.
Yeah, I think one of the things we can consider is, George, and this was your request, as we take a look at revisiting the capital improvement program in the first part of January, taking a look at what resources we might be able to free up.
Once we know what we have, what monies we have.
Yeah, because
Coming
it's really,
free.
it's a fairly manageable section. I think probably the most time-consuming piece will be acquisition of the right-of-way
Okay.
to get that. But it is through I believe it's a utility easement. I believe there's already a utility easement through there. I've run that pathway before, but I think right now it's just a matter of trying to get that initiated. But is this the piece you were looking at?
Yes, that's exactly what I was referring to, that
Okay.
small leg right there.
And it's really fairly manageable. It's just a matter of taking a look at what other projects
Sure.
might have to either be deferred, or what funds might be available. But so
Great. Thank you.
that was item one.
Yes. We had several follow-ups from Public Works. The first one I'll talk about is the traffic calming projects. These are the three that I believe your traffic meeting had come up with. The first one was Cobblestone Drive. All of the recommendations came up to $21,000. That's for striping and the digital feedback signs on speed. Next was Carson Farms. That's $12,000 for the digital feedback sign and the striping. And lastly was Executive Boulevard for $6,000, and that one would just be striping. So that's a total of $39,000. Currently, we have 20 in this proposed budget, so we would have to cut back. Some of them maybe only do striping or signs in some of those areas unless we were to increase that. Next is the guardrail projects. The city's identified 10 different projects. You have a list in front of you of those projects. There's overall, if you were to do all of them, it would require an additional $130,000. The $45,000 that's currently appropriated is just routine maintenance and any accidents It's typical yearly repair. Next item is the condo demolition off West Central Avenue. We got some quotes back and those are coming in right at $12,000. Currently, we don't have any money appropriated for that in the proposed budget, but if you do decide to move forward with that, we would need the $12,000 there. And lastly, there was some, we were curious about what would the outlook be for the 5-year paving. Bill's redone that with the extra person in street maintenance. And so you have 2 sheets there. One is the 5-year local program and the other one is the 5-year grant program.
So how is this put together, Alicia? This is,
The
The-
5-year local streets should be the first page, and it should be a schedule kind of breaking down by year which streets would be addressed.
so these are, these are streets to be done?
Yes,
The ones
those
that
are
are
all the
highlighted?
streets to be, no, the streets that are in red, I believe, he has some notes at the bottom that explain it. I believe the ones in reds are ones that are not addressed within the 5-year window.
Okay. And again, just recognizing that council is getting this information this evening, Bill will be available for questions at Monday's meeting after you've had a chance to take a look at this. But obviously, during the meeting, if questions come up regarding the information, just let us know.
Do we know the grade on all these streets?
They were all graded poor to
Poor.
very poor.
Okay. So D and F or whatever it is.
Okay, yeah, the notes really pretty much explain it.
So then do we know what the difference would be if we had more money or more people, or like what the impact would be on these?
So I believe that this is his most current version, the one that you have in front of him, recalculating what that extra person would mean. I don't believe that he put together anything if he were to add yet an additional person. I'm sure that he could if we ask him for that.
Okay, so I'm not following. This is the paper that shows us how much more could be done if he had one more.
Well, this is with the current, he added in the proposed one person that's included in this budget. He had originally, with this budget request, requested 2 additional street technicians. This is with the 1 proposed. We haven't factored in adding additional ones beyond that 1.
So I think the other question is, what did it look like without the one person? Is that one of your questions?
No, I'm asking what it will look like with 2 people.
With one more person?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, you can make that a follow-up with Bill.
Okay, cause what it looked like without that one person is the old version, right? It's
Right,
already
yeah.
done?
And I don't, materially, I'm not sure it's going to move the needle
Right.
regarding the work. I think it's more kind of maintenance work is what, but we can follow up on that.
I'm just curious for information of what will move the needle to get some of these streets that are in red moved to.
That would be a larger appropriation, more funding, because most of this work is done through contracting
Right.
out.
So I guess I'm just looking for more specifics of what does that look like
Okay.
and how much more money would do, is it one of those situations where we would need so much more money to make a small impact, or are we able to make a little bit more of an impact with?
Well, it could be,
I mean, or is it just the cost of these roads and?
yeah, he's identified, I mean, one way to approach it would be to take a look at the streets highlighted in red that aren't included in that 5-year program and figure out what those, because that's what he hasn't included. They're rated, they're ranked low. What would it cost to do those? And we can, unless we already have that, but.
And you should have that in the cost column if we were to add in there were a few other ones that you would like to add in, like Bernard Avenue, that one's 96,000 is his estimate in repairs. So, I mean, we could see the impact that that would have.
It's a lot.
It's what?
I mean, we have
Yeah, it's a,
hundreds and hundreds and probably a million roads we can't take care of.
yeah, just these alone would
Yeah.
add up pretty quickly.
And it just comes back to the same drum we've been beating all along. We just need to get a new source of funds, go back out and ask for more money at the end of the day.
If you wanna get
Yeah,
this.
if we really wanna be serious about this and start to work towards eliminating this deficit.
So, I mean, I do think you could probably, when you look at the streets that are highlighted in red, for instance, some of these are, I mean, you have to evaluate which ones, what criteria you're gonna use, but, they all have merit. They all have merit. And right now, if I lived on Channing Street and I saw that it was gonna be at least 5 years before Channing was done, or Colonnade is our industrial park, so that there's no residential out there, but, it's kind of the dilemma that we face and that we put before the community.
I mean, the flip side is, the good news is we're able to do more than we thought we were gonna be able to do a couple of years ago, because we've got the gas tax dollars, which are putting money into it, so at least we've made an improvement in terms of the amount that we can do and the timetable we can do it. Still leaves a lot undone, but we're better than we were.
Yes.
before.
Yeah.
And putting in our permissive tax would give us, what, another 200,000?
About that, I think, yeah. And I think one of the considerations there would be is that split between maintenance of roadways plus these other maintenance things that are continuing to challenge us, whether it's striping or signage. There's a lot more than just the
Right.
local streets. There's requests for speed feedback signs and
Right.
all the,
Just what we need to do the stuff that Melissa just talked about, we're talking about over $1 million, or so 1 year,
Yeah.
of that
Yeah.
license plate fee would be not just doing that.
So anyway, that's just a recap.
Can we go back to the 39,000 for Cobblestone, Carson Farms and Executive before we move on? So, I don't remember, after it went to parking and safety, did it come to council? Are we just
No.
caught in this time period limbo? Do things from parking and safety get recommended to council? I don't,
That,
Unless it's
yeah.
some minor thing, yeah.
I think what
I'm just
what
forgetting.
happened was we have the pilot project going on on Hull. And that was, an initiative really from citizens that council acted on. Subsequent to that, or even prior to that, there were requests for traffic calming in other parts of the city. It got elevated, I think, after we did Hull Drive, because we recognized that maybe the striping would be a more effective way of controlling speed than radar and things like that. So you then entertained, I don't know if it was groups of residents from Carson, Cobblestone and Executive, or,
But I think the other part, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, is on Cobblestone and Carson's, I think we had significant speed data that indicated that we needed to do something about speed.
we did.
And so that's why we made the decision. I don't remember what was behind the executive. I think there was a parking issue there or something. on the
Crashes, I
curve.
think, too,
Yeah.
on the curves.
But I think Cobblestone and Carson Farms were significant speed issues that led us to make those recommendations.
and I think that's the reason they're recommending the
Right.
$12,000 of
Right.
speed feedback signs.
And really, depending on how we come out at the end of the year, we're not talking a whole lot of extra money to get this stuff done.
Right, that's what I'm wondering is, like, if it wasn't budget time, would we have made that recommendation to council?
I would've thought it would've come before council.
Yeah, it should've
for
come
now.
for
It
us
should've come to
for
us
now,
as,
yeah.
Okay.
Those expenditures should've come.
I think it was like right before the election and things
Yeah, it
got,
just kinda fell through the cracks.
yeah. Okay,
But I would be in favor of finding the other 19,000.
And we have the room.
Yeah, you know, one question is whether we can handle any of it still within this year, this fiscal year. And if we can, we would, and then, and we can make that determination here before Monday, and if that's the case, we might not have to increase the 2020 budget as much.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
but what you're doing is now it's not an annual cost because the striping gets put in, the speed feedback signs are purchased, they're ours. At some point, that striping has to be maintained, but it's not an annual cost, so.
How late in the year do they strike though?
Well, we would
Strike
have to,
Yeah.
we would, one thing, we could encumber the funds and do it in the spring.
Yeah.
But it has been pretty mild, so there's a possibility it could get done this year, but probably not. Probably have to wait, so.
Okay.
But we can follow up on that.
Just wanna
Is
make
your
sure-
preference to see it, to follow through on all three?
I would like to.
Yes.
I mean, but I'm on the committee, so I voted.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess we'd need to hear from other
Yeah.
council members. If I could just catch, Drew up just a little bit. We had residents who complained basically about excessive speeds in their neighborhoods. We did a whole bunch of speed studies. This is the extreme Cliff Notes version. We identified some streets where not only were people complaining, but we actually found significant data that showed there were some, speed issues outside of the 85th percentile, which is, what they categorize as a significant speed issue.
Meaning like into the 25 going like 85% faster than that?
I think the 85th percentile speed is 85% who's, thank you.
The 85th percentile is a speed at which 85% or of the people traveling feel safe traveling at. So the general rule is 85% are doing 5 miles an hour, up to 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. That falls within a reasonable area. Most 85th percentile can be around 28, 29, is what we typically see. When it gets over 30, then we consider that to start becoming problematic.
Gotcha.
Thank you. He explained it way better than I was about to. So in those cases, we found the data matched what people were noticing and made recommendations to do striping to make the road appear more narrow and hopefully slow people down.
I drove down there yesterday. It does feel more narrow than it used to. So it seems to be working in that.
Did it
regard
change
at
your
least.
behavior?
I don't remember how fast I used to go down there.
Well, good answer.
So we would ask for council's support of
Okay.
that.
Okay. So I guess what we'll do is we'll take a look at what resources we might have this year, if any. If not, then one of the possible amendments to the budget would be before the 19th, around the 19th, probably prior to that, then we could adjust the appropriation ordinance. And, you know, what we have to take a look at is what, if that causes it to be out of balance, and if it does, do we have to make an adjustment somewhere else? But we'll provide that information to you for Monday night.
Okay, thank you.
Can I say, this seemed like, looking at the list of roads, it seems like the biggest areas of issue would be along the primary access roads for larger subdivisions. So is that something that as we approve future developments, can be included in the initial road build?
So
Excellent.
What Bill will tell you is if you do it everywhere, it doesn't work.
Yes.
So
That's fair.
But we're building our roads differently now, learning from these mistakes that, maybe not mistakes, but what we didn't know back then. And so if you drive down the new section of Boulder, for example, there's curb cuts and there's center islands. And so all of those things effectively do the same thing as striping without it being striping.
Yeah.
So we're cleverly accomplishing the same thing without necessarily striping every road because,
And those
like,
have longer lasting
yes.
than a stripe road.
So I think we wanna make sure that on our big neighborhood collectors that we're including designs like that moving forward.
You'll see for and the project will be before you Monday night, the Schultz Elementary School expansion projects. It includes a partnership between the city and the schools for the extension of Cobblestone to Pennock Avenue. And included in that design is a median for that very reason. And so anyway, that's just an example.
Anything else?
No, we don't have anything, just that was our recap from,
Thank you.
for Monday night.
Thank you.
So now we have
Police Department?
Madam Mayor, members of council, our police department budget starts on page 21 inside your budget document. Couple pending changes at the police department contained right off the bat in the organizational chart. So we are top down. We have a chief right now and 4 captains. So this shows a little bit of both, and I'll talk a little bit further when we go into the personnel changes. But right now we have the staff captain that is below the police chief is a current position. That position will be going away. And proposing to add an assistant police chief, which is actually a position that was in our organizational chart in 2012. And I occupied that for about 2 weeks and then became interim chief and then chief. So we are proposing to adjust our organizational chart in that way, and that will allow us a little better line up in terms of our functions as well as our personnel being supervised. Next slide, this shows the breakdown of our personnel. Proposed, the changes, just to highlight it real quickly for you, the captain goes down to 3 from 4. That's to allow for the assistant chief, so there's no addition of new personnel there. It's a changing of the position. We are also, where you see data analyst technician, that is not a new position. That's a part-time employee going to a full-time employee position. And then service coordinator is a new position for 2020. The one thing I'll point out in here, when you look at the budget narrative from the police department, there are a couple areas where I noted it as being below expectations, and that was specifically in our patrol area and our detective division, our investigations. And if you look at our officer ranks, we're authorized at 44 today, and we are fully staffed, and we've been fully staffed for a couple months now. But the reality of that is, at one point this summer, I had 6 in training, so 6 in the academy or in field training. So when I had 4 in the academy, actually I had 5 in the academy at one time. Then 4 rolled out, and I had 1 I hired that was certified. So I had 5 in field training at one time, but they don't count towards shift strength, and they really can't work. So they're working, but they're learning, and they're with a seasoned officer who actually is probably less productive for us because part of their duties is to train. So when I look at where we should be with our personnel, I had to note we're below expectations because our numbers are a little bit mixed right now, but it's not a function of not doing the work. It was a function of that issue of staffing, of just not having the bodies. Our numbers, like I said, are probably a little bit down right now, but our guys were just as busy, if not busier, because there was fewer of them handling the volume. And the same thing goes for the detective bureau. It kind of goes hand in hand with patrol staffing. So our detectives work our major cases, most of our felonies, violent crimes, and sexual assaults, but there's a lot more they should be doing. A lot of our patrol officers handle some complicated theft and fraud and technology-related cases, and they're doing more and more of the back-end work in terms of search warrants, subpoenas, and coordinating some of the data collection that is, we pride ourselves on our officers, going from A to Z on investigations. That's something that we actually use as a recruiting tool. But at a certain point, there's a return on investment that we're probably losing by having them off the road that much. So we did some studies this past year just to look at where we could benefit in terms of force multipliers by having detectives handle that work, and that's where, if we had a detective or 2 that could take over some more cases for patrol, it's not an issue of it's not that they're not doing well, it's that if we had the capacity, they could be doing more, and then patrol could be working better. So that's where we believe that the Detective Bureau and the patrol are both, why they're graded at below expectations. It's more of a numbers and capacity issue than an actual work product issue. So we've alluded to these personnel changes, but the first is the assistant chief. Like I said, 2012, I spent 2 weeks as the first ever assistant chief for the Delaware Police Department. And then Sheriff Martin left, and I became the interim chief and then the chief in November. And at that time, I had another promotion then to make of a captain, and I had captains that were all relatively brand new. And instead of having a process that none of them would be eligible for, we left the organizational structure with 4 captains, had one of them in a staff position, and have tried to create equal opportunities for them to, to kind of learn and grow into the job. And we're at a point now where we're mature now at administrative level, and I think it's a good time to implement the assistant chief position. That would do a couple things: give me another person that could help with union-related negotiations and some of those discussions that right now I don't have anyone that is not in the union to assist me. But more so than that, it would help us better align some of the captains. It would help better align the personnel under, the operations chief, the support chief, the administrative, or captain rather, and then have the assistant chief take over some of the administrative duties like policy and public information and some of the detailed public records requests we get. It would just better align functions and personnel. The next change we have is that transition of our permanent part-time records analyst to a full-time employee position as a data analyst technician. So the part-time records analyst was new in 2019, and we weren't really sure what the capacity would be, what the work product would be. We had a job description put together, but we were just, we had to see how it worked in reality, and it's worked really well. So we hired Kim Morris, she's a retired state trooper, and she's done a really good job working on pulling analytics out of our parking programs. And she's also been able to accomplish a lot more than we thought we would in the first year, to the point where she's doing some data analysis and working with the county on crime analysis. And she's been doing some enhancements on some photography work for us where she's actually solved some cases. So we have that actually is a force multiplier for us if we could create that full-time position. So we have that data analyst technician works with our kind of our CSI. Heidi Thomas is our police technician. She does a lot of crime scene work and evidence work, and between the two of those, we can take some technical duties off the Detective Bureau that would free some detectives up to do maybe some more of the work that our patrol guys are doing. So it helps us. There's a trickle-down effect there. And we have to look at how we'll divvy that work up. We think we really should be 3 deep in some of the technology. We do we do extractions from cell phones, and we do a lot of those things that take time. And if I could have a qualified civilian do it, it frees up the detective to work cases. So that is the proposal there for the full-time position. And then the next one is one that's really kind of exciting to me. We've worked a long time on this, but this is for a full-time service coordinator in cooperation with the Delaware Morrow Mental Health Recovery Services Board. Deanna Brandt is the executive director. She would be here tonight, but she happens to have her board meeting this night as well, and is talking about it with them at the very moment. But we've spent a long time talking about this position, but for, just historically for Councilman Farrell, we have done a lot with our mental health population, with our drug and alcohol addicted population, and with some of those folks that are affected by some of those social issues, to not really treat them in the justice system, but to try to get them into treatment or into counseling or linked up with services. So we do crisis intervention training with all our officers, and we took that and built it into wraparound teams where we work with the support agencies, be it housing or mental health or developmental or counts for older adults. Anyone who's involved will form a team to provide ongoing support for that person, and those teams will keep that person from de-escalating. until the point where they don't need a team anymore, and it's all voluntary. But it's been very successful, and we push that into data sharing on an almost instantaneous, it's a 24-hour turnaround. So if we have contact with someone who's having a mental health issue, a drug, or, well, it started with mental health, but we have found a way and developed a process to immediately share that information with the mental health agencies. And what we found is a very high percentage of the time, it's their current clients that we're running across, and when they see that activity at an earlier stage, they can intervene and keep them from de-escalating to the point that they do have to be placed in the hospital on emergency hospitalization and cause other disturbances and problems for the public and for us. So we do that. When opioids hit, we started working with Maryhaven, do the same thing with Maryhaven. So we do rapid engagement. We will provide people, if we run across someone with a drug or alcohol issue that we think contributed to their contact with us, we will get them the information to get to Maryhaven's rapid engagement program, and we will then follow up the next day and go back to them and try and talk them into going in with us to the Maryhaven program to rapid engagement. But that's a one-hit, a one-shot thing. So what this position will do is enhance our ability to do that. So we'll have someone who can work full-time with this population, and it's not just mental health, drugs, and alcohol, but we have the homelessness and other social issues, and they're all interrelated because there's all some causation that we can assist with some of these programs. So it's really a good outcome for this happen. It'll be predicated on us getting the grant from the Delaware Moral Mental Health Recovery Services Board, but we've laid the groundwork. We don't think that's going to be an issue. They already have the funding via their state allocation. This is very similar to the first program at the fire department through SourcePoint, and there's other service coordinators that are coming on board with county EMS, and they all have different areas. And it's, to us, it's really important that they all stay connected and work together, but it'll really form a really important umbrella of service coordination for not just the city, but also in the county. So that is the last personnel change that we're proposing for 2020. The significant line items, this is just, we are looking at upgrading equipment. So our tactical unit is a countywide team, and they've operated with a lot of the same specialty equipment for probably the last 10 years. I think I was a captain when I last replaced a lot of this stuff. So some of their equipment they use on their call outs, and we've had a lot of them this year, unfortunately, but like their weaponry, their night vision, their protective gear, that stuff is not inexpensive, and every year we have the conversation, we've pushed it off, but this is a good year because we don't have any, we're not trying to do anything in the building this year, so that is one of the investments we're looking at. The other is in patrol, is we also have, we maintain some ballistic shields and vests in our cruisers that are rifle rated, and those expire, so our shields are all way past their expiration date. And we have vests that the officers can wear when they're on a gun call, and they're not only they rifle rated, but then it has all the gear that they need right there, right on their chest. So there's we're going to replace those armor plates, and then we're looking at another thing we lost a service of this year is our Rapid ID, and it's not cheap. It's a fingerprint identification device, but it went out of service, and it went out of warranty, and it broke, and the company that produced it is not in business anymore, and the one that bought them is really, really expensive. So it's cost prohibitive to fix our current units, and so we're looking to at least get one more. They're very beneficial. And then the final thing is, both for our bike patrol and for our patrol officers, is we need some crowd control equipment. We have been fortunate to this point, but we're attracting larger and larger crowds to the city. We've had some controversial populations of people come in. We had the comic book store, and it was not a problem, but there was the potential there, and we really, as a county, are probably underprepared for that. So as a county, law enforcement in the county is working on this, putting together enough people within each department so that we can, as a mutual aid service, provide every agency in the county with a sizable field force and response to if you have large gatherings of or civil disobedience. So that's both patrol and our bike officers. The bikes are really, really effective at crowd control, and we actually have Officer Hatcher is very prominent in training. He does the bike officer response team, and we've trained that at the conference here. We train it as a standalone class. So I've watched it. I was at a Chiefs conference in Philadelphia and watched a large crowd gather to protest, and just watched. They just rolled the bikes in, and they were very effective. And just everyone just stayed where they were, and the bikes were just there, and it was really non-confrontational. It's a lot softer than the turtle suits, but it's very effective. So that's one of our proposals in terms of equipment. Other is analytics and technical support. We're going to start sharing the cost of some analytical software with the county. They've fronted the bill for many, many years, and the sheriff has asked all the partner agencies to pick up their share in 2020, so that's the accurate cost sharing. We're also looking at upgrading some software and some analytical tools. So you'll see Cellbrite. That's our cell phone technology. Allows us to execute search warrants on cell phones. We're looking at getting a few more pieces of that technology to allow us to do some things. And also it's the training and trying to be more than one deep. So training an additional person to be able to do that and get them, the annual certification. And then some analysis and enhancement tools for our new full-time data analyst. The only other thing is really related to the CIP, but it will be coming before you soon, is our records management system.
It's on Monday night.
Monday night. That's actually a really a good resolution to that. That's been a long-term issue for us, and it is already budgeted, but that'll be a project. We are partnering with everyone in the county to have a shared system hosted through Delaware County, and it not only provides us a lot of capacity and capabilities, but also significant cost savings. That is everything in terms of significant line items. New initiatives, one of the things, a couple things we're going to work on is we're continuing our wellness initiative. So our physical fitness and wellness, we're continuing that uniform conversion, so we should be through with that this year. But one of the things we're going to continue working on is officer resilience. We did a lot of stuff with financial wellness and mental health wellness. We're going to continue that. There's officer resilience and being prepared ahead of time for these things. And I just attended a executive summit where there were some really interesting concepts in terms of training, and so we want to make these things available because the conversation of suicides among police officers, in 2018 more officers killed themselves than were killed by in the line of duty, and so it's becoming a large topic, and we want to continue that conversation. And we also want to talk about family wellness. So I've made some contacts with some of the churches that have, actually the chaplain from Columbus Police Department is a member up here, so we are tentatively looking at continuing that wellness piece with our officers. And then the other one is already been alluded to, is for the first time really since I've been chief, is we're seeing some of these speed complaints actually borne out by the data. There's several streets that are showing 85th percentile speeds that are higher than we'd like to see. So Cobblestone, Carson Farms, Bowtown just came in really high. So there are new challenges with that, and that we have to be responsive to that. So we're just beginning the conversation of how do we be more dedicated to traffic enforcement in 2020. So that's something we'll be looking at as well. That's actually all I have in terms of the formal presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Just have one, Chief. Looking at your goals, your number 2 goal talks about conversion of the organization structure, and then number 4 talks about patrol and detective staffing. I know a while back we talked about maybe bringing in a patrolman or a police manpower person. Do you think that would be worth doing, to bring in a professional to do a staffing study?
Well, there's a couple things. We actually did our own. So I did one for the 2019 budget, and then we looked at staffing in the Detective Bureau and kind of we kind of borrowed the philosophies and applied that to the work in the Detective Bureau. And we're gonna try and do the same thing next year once our new officers are actually on the street contributing, just to see where that shakes out. But City Manager Homan has also looked through
ICMA, Center
ICMA's.
for Public Safety.
And I just got that today, so I printed it. I'm looking over it, looking at an assessment of where we're at and where we could be, and I think that's all valuable. The one thing I think we just need to maybe get through this conversion of our records management and CAD systems, so it's just gonna split the baby in the middle of the year. But I think anytime you can look at data to drive what you're doing is better than just swagging it, so definitely would be valuable.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments?
We have- Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
We have an excellent police department. I hear nothing when I'm out in the community but wonderful things about all the work that you and your staff do. Received a neighborhood complaint yesterday, emailed last evening. By this morning, there was already a response back. We're on it, here's what we're doing, and I think that's pretty typical of the amazing police department that we have, and our community thanks you very much.
Oh, thank you, and I make sure I let my guys know how supportive council is of us too, because it's nice to have a supportive relationship.
Just real quickly, I know Bruce was kind of understated modesty of the importance of that work that he's been doing for that new position with the Delaware Mental Moral Recovery Health Services Board. That's a significant milestone. It's one of the first, I believe, in the state. And hopefully if the Executive Director Brand's board approves it and the funding's in place, that'll help us significantly, because we do get a lot of issues that just kind of, we have a large safety net in Delaware County, but there are those who do fall through that safety net, and that's a challenge whether you're a EMS fire provider or you're a police officer. So this will, I think, help, and it's a collaboration that's pretty unique.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're off the hot seat, I guess.
It's hot.
I know.
We've made some adjustments, right?
We're working on it.
Need a margarita machine.
Mr. Blake? No, Sean, sorry.
Hey, you can take Blake first. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Thank you for having me this evening. My budget, the Econ Dev budget begins on page 11. That's right. All right, just to set the stage a little bit for what I'll be talking about here. You recently heard from Mr. McDonald at One Columbus that we had 31% job growth in the last 9 years with the city. Let me break that down a little bit for you. One, to compare that locally to a high-performance community that we all know, one that Mr. Cridler just came from, Dublin, saw about a little over 34% in that same time period. So, that's a very high-performance community with a very large ED staff who's doing great things, obviously, but we're keeping up with that and doing very well. We're still one of the top job growth communities in the state. When I look back at the work that we've done since I've been here in 2013, if you break that 31% down, about half of it was through our projects. So half of it was organic, things that might have come here anyhow, and half of it was projects that we brought in or we grew companies, retained companies, and grew them. I would argue that even on the organic side, though, that the work that we're doing actually helps the organic side on its own. So you wouldn't be seeing those organic numbers, I don't think, if it weren't for the work that we're doing as a city, as a team. I only keep statistics myself on projects that we do. So when you see my monthly reports and whatnot, those are projects we actually work on. If something comes in here and we don't touch it, I don't count it. So we've grown a lot in the work that we've done here at the city. We're approaching 400 projects for this year, which is the highest number that we've seen since I've been here. That'll lead into, with a 20% conversion, nearly 20% conversion rate, that'll be about 500 jobs this year, with about $16.5, $17 million of payroll by the end of the year. That's really decent. We can always do more, trust me. So that gets me into where we're at here with the budget. So there's my team. I don't have a complex organizational chart like Bruce's. It's the city manager who I report to, and then you see the economic development coordinator there below me. That is a change, and a proposed change in the budget. As you all know, Kelsey Miller, or Scott rather, I'm sorry, just left us for the county. That allowed us to take a look at the department and explore how we can maximize our resources while also not incredibly expanding the department by sheer number. So we reorganized the position and are proposing upgrading it to a coordinator level position. We've had a specialist position since about 2014. In fact, I had already been talking to Tom and Kelsey about trying to move her to a coordinator level anyhow, trying to get that done. And the difference really is between those two positions is the amount of ability. With a specialist, typically it's somebody right out of college who's learning how to be an employee, let alone how to do economic development. So think of it this way, it takes a year for this to teach them how to be an employee. It takes another year for them to really learn the bits and pieces of economic development, the complexities, and in that third year they become a very effective employee, and then you can start looking at moving them on. If we start at a coordinator level, theoretically, we can hit the ground running a little faster. We're not at least wasting that first year, not wasting, but we're not taking that first year and trying to teach somebody how to just work. So that is the proposed change from a staffing level. This person, I hope, will be able to take and run with actual projects. With a specialist, anytime it got to really a complex project level where you're actually working with incentives and development processes and working with the team here, it was really being turned over to me, and then I was running with it until the day they got their occupancy permit or whatever that might be. Now with a coordinator level position, I'm proposing that we get to that point faster, where they're actually, especially on the business retention expansion side, really running with the projects and managing them on their own, allowing me to do other things, and actually hopefully even give them some attraction projects too, depending on what that workload looks like. I guess I actually already talked about this. So that would be the reclassification of economic development specialist to economic development coordinator. That's moving from an M3 to an M8 on the management plan. Interestingly, those two things actually kind of coincide. So really starting off at the coordinator is kind of almost the same cost to us as we were going to be with Kelsey at her last step in the M3. So budgetarily, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference until the following years. So I already kind of talked about that. So other significant line items, I mean, my budget's really very simple. Other than the wage and benefits that we just discussed, my budget's identical to 2019. Some new initiatives that really aren't budgetarily impactful, but things that I'd really like to start doing. We have more capabilities in-house now, so I want to start doing some more business video highlights and just using video in general to start highlighting our property and our inventory, really, our product. I think that really helps to move that and put it in a new light and market it. Continuing our east side mixed-use development work, that's really taking off right now. I can't really talk about some of the things that are going on over there yet in a public meeting, but we have lots of interest on the east side right now. So I'm excited about the comp plan getting completed so that we have a little more guidance and we can start working on some of the land use type situations and really start moving forward over there. Next year, speaking of the comp plan, I anticipate once that's complete, I would like to begin the work on having a new ED plan that helps move that comp plan forward, that the two items work together to move the city forward, and having the new person in place will obviously help with that ED plan completion. And that'll hopefully be a 5-year plan that we carry us into the near future with the new goals that council has put in place. Utilization of the comp plan to continue to attract developer partners for Sawmill Parkway corridor. We've been talking about that for years now, but you know, we've often talked about things like site preparation and putting utilities and whatnot in, but we really actually just need to know how we're going to use the land now with our new priorities in place. If we're talking about white collar jobs, what's the best way to use the land? So that's the work that I think we have to do before we even start anything else. But as you know, Tom has learned a lot here recently and whatnot, and you know, Kyle came with this information he's seen with our east side. Developers really aren't willing to assemble land any longer and spend money on large tracts of land. They're looking for others to assist them in that process or put it in an option format where they can take down chunks at a time. So we've got to figure that out. How can we participate in that? And you see my last bullet point there is look at the potential of creating something like a CIC to assist with projects. That's an entity that can assemble land and things of that nature and mix public-private dollars to do so. But we have to be able to help out with that, I think, if we really want to move Sawmill Parkway or the east side forward. Continued renovation of second, third floor offices. You're seeing 2 really impactful projects kicking off actually this week with the Son of Thurman building, which we incentivized, and the 17 North Sandusky building, which is the old DPS building. They are starting third floor renovations on both of those buildings. So you'll have approximately 14,000 square foot of office space coming online here soon. Some of it's actually already getting spoken for in 17 North Sandusky. So very timely. But I tell you what, the space above Greater Gouda, it was available for about 3 or 4 days, and somebody went up and grabbed the lease. So office space is at a premium right now. We need to encourage as much second floor renovation as we can, not just for offices, also for nice residences for these white collar employees to live in. We're continuing to work on the hotel project. And hopefully leveraging something like that or mixed use development for a parking structure that we know is very important to our downtown's health. Now that we have Kyle here, I'd really like to get more into exploring an airport economic development campaign. How can we really leverage that airport for the future? I think it has a lot of potential, but that's going to require us to think very creatively and actually be willing to spend some money in order to move those sites within that airport. And then again, the CIC is a potential to help with actually all of those things, and that's really something I'd like to get back off the ground if at all possible. We have one, but it's just dormant right now. It's actually one of the first in the state. That would be my budget. Please let me know if you have any questions.
What's the CIC stand for again?
That's a Community Improvement Corporation. Those were developed in 1966 by the state, and actually ours was created in 1966. It was probably actually one of the very first attempts at a CIC. That's what I used to run in Madison County as our economic development agency.
Sean, could you just add, just update on Cohatch?
Yes.
How that's working? And
Absolutely.
the DEC, the Delaware Entrepreneurial Center.
Great.
So
Yeah,
I
I was
know
anticipating.
Councilman
one.
Hellinger had wanted to know at one point how things were working out over there in terms of lease out and whatnot. So.
Yeah, we're actually, as of about a week ago, we're 100% occupied in Cohatch. So we have 20 offices in there with 21 businesses. That's approximately 29 employees. So that's roughly about $2.4 million of payroll being generated in the building right now. So it's exceeding actually what we had anticipated in our, when we incentivized the building. And it's doing all kinds of other things in the community that I think are helping the community greatly, as well as, and I was telling one of the candidates that we've been interviewing for the coordinator level position here this week that, because she asked me, you know, what's something we're proud of this year. I think that's something that's actually brought new attention to our city. It's just a very cool office complex. And when you take people in, or when they see it from the street, they think of Delaware in a whole new light. It's like, wow, that's Delaware? Delaware's doing that kind of stuff now? I had somebody in there today, I just couldn't believe what they were seeing. And so it's a marketing piece too, honestly. There's about 70 coworkers at any one time. It fluctuates anywhere from 60 up to about 120, given that they track that monthly, and it just, the co-working goes up and down. It ebbs and flows, and people come from other co-hatches and come up and use it, and so on and so forth. So that's all over the board. But there's a lot of companies using the meeting and training space too. That happens very frequently. If they don't have 1 or 2 trainings a week, I'd be surprised right now. The Delaware Entrepreneurial Center, that also is completely full in offices, and actually I lost my office there, so it is now full with somebody we moved out of Cohatch, so that went in reverse, but it was good. So the Soybean Council, they have Arable Labs, which is a laboratory subsidiary that does testing on soybean products. Actually, there was a big article here recently about a roof product that a large roofing company in Columbus developed that keeps your shingles, that increases the lifespan of your shingles by probably about 15 years. That was actually developed at Arable Labs with that company and tested there. So already doing very cool work. And now they're in Cohatch and using actually lab space at the university. We looked all over the place to put a wet lab in, and it just made more sense to use existing lab space, underutilized lab space at the university. And what a great partnership, again, between the university, the city, and a private entity like that. So very excited about that. We've ramped up programming at the Entrepreneurial Center. There's at least a monthly educational program going on right now, and we're adding to that. We just had our last advisory board meeting, which Tom is a member of as well, and actually kind of building a more complex and formal business plan for the Entrepreneurial Center that we can all follow, and perhaps even just looking at bringing a director in to run it. It really needs at this point somebody to be in there on a daily basis and manage that programming, bring more programming in, and coordinate the entrepreneurs that are in the space. I'm kind of doing most of the coordination of the entrepreneurs right now and trying to get them to resources from my department, but which is going fine, but we can do more. We can always do more. Hope that answers your question.
Do you feel that you have the materials you need as far as on our website? And we use paper materials, but do you feel that you have what you need right now?
Yeah, in fact, I'm adding I had some money left over this year, so I'm adding a application called Catalyst. The county's already been utilizing it, the Finance Authority and whatnot. We just haven't had access to it, and it's a subscription-based product. It's another way of marketing property, and Dublin used it. It's actually the application that commercial real estate people utilize. the property database that we utilize that's offered through the state is directed more at site consultants and entrepreneurs and people who are looking at properties. This is a way to get right in front of brokers and agents, and it has its own lead generation system built into the system. We don't have access to the county. ED staff has had that, and I get those occasionally from them if they don't have product and they see that we do. Bob will send it down and say, hey, I have somebody that's looking for this. But it'd be nice just to be able to see that on my own and see those leads come through and be able to respond to them directly, just like we do with Zoom Prospector at the state level.
Questions, comments?
So, Sean, I want to talk about your goals a little bit. So, I wonder if 12 goals is a lot to focus on, and would you be better off with 4 or 5? And specifically, some quantifiable stuff that you can come back and say, we hit the mark this year on this, or we didn't. As last year, you had 12 goals and you exceeded expectations. You're not setting the bar high enough if you're doing that, you know? So I just wonder if we could, if you could come up with some 3 or 4 or 5, whatever it would be, things that say, here's the we're going to focus on, here's something to quantify. For me, that would be helpful.
Absolutely, Ken.
And I appreciate all the work you're doing, and everybody that works with you tells me what a good guy you are, so you're doing a lot of the right stuff, but I'm a goal guy, and I like to see goals that are meaningful, measured.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Anyone else? All right,
Thank you very much. Thank you for your support.
I guess one more, are you in search of somebody? Have you started interviewing? You know you have.
Yeah, we had about 54 applications. Yeah, it was actually very good. Surprisingly, you figure this time of year, and you always hear the candidate pool out there is not great, but we had a great application pool. We pulled 8 out of that, interviewing 7 out of the 8, and hope to bring 2 or 3 back for a second interview and go from there. So, yeah, great candidates. I mean, it's actually probably going to be a hard decision this time, which again surprises me
That's wonderful.
with everything you hear.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you for your time. Not the best evening in the world for a cough to be forming, but here we are and we'll weather this storm together, yes. All right, Councilman Farrell and Councilman Hoffman, who I presume will watch the highlights of this video. I'm an enterprise fund. I don't know if you've worked with one before. Okay, so you live in the city and you get a monthly water and sewer bill. That is where my funds come from. I don't dip into the general fund at all. No tax dollars go towards our operations. We are 100% self-sustaining. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Not that this isn't still things to be considered in our budget, not that we shouldn't be taking the best precautions on how we use that money and the best way to grow our enterprise itself with the funds and strategically thinking of how to best serve our customers, but I just thought that was a fair note to throw out there. So let's begin with.
Can you hold on just one?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No.
Does anyone know what page?
No, I'm desperately looking.
On the programmatic, what page
Yes.
are you on?
Oh.
You've got line item, you have programmatic stuff.
We have a table of contents for
Yeah, I
programmatic,
know.
or for line
Yeah,
item, but
I know.
not for.
It was,
Is it 89?
you have it? Completion.
$69.
Public to distribution on 76.
Okay, I found it, thank you.
What page?
69.
Okay, thanks. Yes. Note to file on that.
You're welcome. I didn't help, but you're welcome. Right? So here is the personnel count. There are changes in here. The next 4 slides are all going to kind of be one big topic. So I'm not going to go through these line item by line. There are changes. We're going to address them and their meanings or their real purposes continued. on this, there is one thing I'd like to call. So you can see that our total count is increasing here. And so I went back, I could easily find back into budgets dating back to 2000. I'm sure further back would have been possible, but it wasn't worth the search. Dating back to 2000, the department has not added staff count personnel except for the watershed position, which was brought in grant funded wise and because of specific state EPA regulations that forced that position to be necessary. We have not increased since before then. I mean, we were still at the same number besides the watershed coordinator at that time, and in that time the city's population has doubled. Our distribution lines have doubled, our collection lines have doubled, the things we are federally mandated to provide to our consumers have multiplied many times over. But I just want to say that we are very efficient with how we are providing these services, and so yes, we will continue on. Here's my proposed org chart. So when I was hired in by Tom, one of the first things he said to me was, I want you to take some time, I want you to really look at how this department is running, and then I want you to have suggestions for how to make it better. This is finally me making suggestions on how to make it better. What I'm doing here is creating a deputy director position, or reinstituting it. It existed at one time. What we've had, and I know some people don't like this pointer thingy. Oh, it's changed. What we had was, we had this position and this position, and the two lines here were, one was reporting here, one was reporting here. It's just an overly redundant use of our personnel. So what I'm doing is consolidating and really expecting some of our people who have manager type titles, I'm expecting more out of them. And that really kind of focuses down into our distribution and collection crew managers. They're valuable assets to the team. They've both long-time city employees. I need more of the daily direction and coordination out of those positions than I do these high-level superintendent positions. So that's what we're doing. We're bringing more of the dailies to our crew managers. I've got an overall field superintendent who's going to be overseeing the more high level of the field personnel, and then I've got the deputy director position. That deputy director position is planned to be moved. Our current maintenance and project manager and personnel will be moving to that position under this recommendation. I don't think it can be understated how valuable that employee is to this organization. He already encompasses and does the duties of the position just without the title. He's been with the city since 1991. He's going to be a hard loss when we lose him, and so that is also another reason for the creation of the project manager position. That helps us with our succession planning, that helps us prepare for what is, for our department, basically a Dean Stelzer leaving. It was what we're really trying to prepare for, because that's a big deal too, right? And then just beyond that, we do have a need for increased capacity on our capital projects execution, and I think I relayed that within our narrative. I had a couple below expectation marks, and those were both related to execution of projects, both within the Public Utilities Administration section. Project execution I noted as below expectations. The reorganization of these responsibilities and what I plan on people focusing on is really meant to streamline and help projects get done. And then also in the collection side, which is where most of our CIP project failings have been happening, with system repair and replacement. That again, this is meant overall to do that. And it really showed itself on the collection side, because there's a lot of minutia to getting projects like that done. There's hours and hours of video footage of sewers that you've got to really just sit there and crawl through to really make these projects happen. And one project manager who's also trying to run the daily activities of the field crew can't sit there and go through that, and it really was just a throughput need of sorts. So moving on, I've touched on these, my personnel changes. Reclassification of the maintenance and project manager to deputy director. Addition of a project manager position to the administration staff. Reclassification of the assistant wastewater manager to the field superintendent. So this is this position right here. As is, he's only over this chain right here. And with the addition of both, it didn't make sense for his position to be called the wastewater manager. And then the reclassification of the watershed coordinator's pay grade. This was a full positional study done with DAS. This is a college degree, bachelor degree position. She had several years of experience working up in the Cleveland area, and she was at the M2 pay grade. It kind of be expected in, I guess, in a job field where half the positions out there are grant funded, but it doesn't mean that was correct for here for the level of responsibilities, duties, and education that was held by the incumbent. And I will say that while going through the audit process of her position, what we really realized is that what we're suggesting is an M5 for this position. M5 is what I need out of this position regardless of who's in it. That's the base level. If who we have now left and somebody was coming back in, this is where I need them to operate. When we scored who's in the position, honestly, she scored well above an M5. The things she's taking on, whether directed to or of her own volition, she is operating much higher. And so what we decided is that it probably makes sense in the future to also create maybe a watershed level 2 or something to that effect, because who we have, we would be mistaken to let her go because we're not fully recognizing what she brings to the team. And I think Tom and Bill were here, he would echo the same thing because she has started working outside of public utilities as well. She's working with many different departments right now, and she is all-star. And I want to do what I can to keep the best that we have.
Why don't you mention the MORPC, the Sustainable 2050?
I didn't know if you wanted to do that
Well,
yet. So
I mean, you can let them know. We'll get the official word out.
Sure. So MORPC Sustainable 2050, communities can go through a auditing process and see how, making sure that we are applying the principles, that we are meeting what they would like to see of communities going forward. And as Dublin did and many other communities in getting certified, Caroline led up our initiative to get classified or to get ranked or scored. It's a grueling process, big worksheet. You try to open it in Excel and it takes upwards of 3 to 4 minutes just for the spreadsheet to open. But we've been working on it all year, and we just got notice back this week or last week that the city of Delaware is receiving platinum status, which is the highest level. And so we're all very excited right now because it has been a lot of effort, and across many departments, it takes input from the whole city, and that's where a lot of the time was spent, just trying to get all this. You have to have backup for this piece of data, you have to have backup for this one, and so just really getting everything together. But that was led by Caroline, and we couldn't be happier with the outcome.
And there'll be a recognition at one of the
Mhm.
MORPC meetings that we'll make sure you're aware of.
Yep, my belief is that it's going to be the first meeting of 2020 with MORPC. So,
Congratulations.
yes, thank you. Significant line items, starting with water treatment. One thing that I feel very strongly about, even though sometimes not everybody agrees with me, is that the water treatment plant on 23 needs a turn lane. We have more people entering the plant than we ever have. We now have a shooting range up there, and I've talked with Chief, and I mean, if you want to weigh in.
Yeah, turning into the plant, your eyes are on your rearview mirror just to make sure that you don't have to bail. It's a scary proposition sometimes.
And with the fact
education
that,
center.
yes, and with the fact that, this is where we decided to include the education center for when the plant was renovated, we are actively inviting school programs and children and just residents to come visit the plant. We need a turnoff of a 55-mile-per-hour state route. And while we can't get the full distance that ODOT design specs list, when asked the question, they said anything is better than nothing. Yes, you know, have a half-length one, that's fine, just have a turn lane, and they were very supportive of it. We will have to request a little bit of right-of-way access from Freddy's. We don't see a whole lot of problem there. Maybe we have some personal ties and know some people there through some of our dealings, but that is one thing that I had proposed, and that's actually back in the construction fund, back in the CIP projects, which I have listed on there as page 118.
Who took this picture? Is this
Oh,
through
this-
our?
It's a good one, isn't it?
It's an excellent, I mean, it really looks like, is that a actual pic?
You know what I just texted, Dave? That's what I just texted. That's a great picture.
It really looks nice. That's a
Yeah.
nice looking plant.
It is.
You know? Really, I mean,
Don't sound so surprised.
It just doesn't get a lot of attention. I mean, that looks really good.
Now, I don't know if we need to redo that now with the firing range there or not. I mean, it looks good as is.
Yeah, great.
So, and then the other one, the licensing fees line item, you'll notice is doubled. The problem we run into with that item is the 2020 license renewal permit fees for the plant to operate. So 2020 permit expires December 31st of 2019, and they expect you to be paying and renewing on January 1st. So our PO system isn't quite back open that quickly, and they start getting very perturbed very quickly, like they've never worked with a governmental entity. So we are actually proposing to start budgeting, say, for 2020 and 2019. We're going to do it a year ahead. So 1 year we'll have a double allocation, which will be next year, and then we'll go back to being 1 year budgeted for it every year. But that is why that one is so much larger than normal. Water distribution. We've got another good picture there. There's really nothing of substance within this one that I thought was worth calling out, but I will notice, or I will make note that with the uniforms line item, and this is meant to cover all of our divisions, or all of our departments, they are going up. We as a city, utilities, public works, parks, we all uniformly, decided to go with a new provider. It is a much higher quality uniform, as in the face that the public is seeing out of our employees every day is much better. As the utilities department, we only really used to offer the pants as the laundered item, and we'd give them shirts and they would have to wash them on their own. Now we have a full uniform suite. It does cost more money, but it is a much nicer product. And then getting into the clothes we're providing for the plant personnel, we now can offer fire-resistant clothing items, which are important when you're working on certain pieces of equipment within electrical buckets and whatnot. So while the cost goes up, the worth is there. They were worthwhile changes. Wastewater treatment. So maintenance building expansion, what I'm proposing with this line item, and this as well will be showing up back in the construction wastewater funds, so on page 121, we have a definite need for space of many types. The lifetime purpose of this project would be for storage of maintenance project needs, repair materials, things like that needed throughout the plant. Currently, we have things stored in garage bays. We've got stuff everywhere. We just don't have enough storage space. But in the short term, I also need room for people. And so when this expansion is done, I'm going to have a small bit of office space in the expansion for some of our plant maintenance personnel, so I can move them out of the main building. I don't have anywhere to put my new project manager. I have nowhere to, not only do I have nowhere to put him, I currently have my watershed coordinator in a cubicle box in the corner of my conference room. I need space. So this is knocking out two birds with one stone for the moment. It may not be the forever solution to my administration space needs, but it helps me right now, and I don't know how else to hire in somebody without somewhere to put them. I don't want to set them at a conference room table, to be real honest with you. Maintenances of equipment facility. So the wastewater treatment plant, it's not old per se. Equipment-wise, it's about 15 years old, but that is about the lifespan of a lot of major mechanical equipment. So we do have some focused repairs and replacements that we're gonna start implementing throughout, and those are detailed in the line item descriptions, most of those. But what I will call notice to in the building, or in the facility maintenance line item, is roofing. We've been replacing roofing throughout the plant. Most of these roofs are 40-plus years old, flat roofs. We've been replacing them. Over the last 2 years, we've replaced 4 in the last 2 years. But next year's roof is the big one. It's a $70,000 line item. So it's worth noting that we're only doing one this year, but it's the big one. So we're pushing this one off a little bit, but they're leaking. There's equipment inside these buildings, and this is a worthwhile project. And then there will be one more roof next year, but that's the smallest. That's a $14,000 roof. Sludge and biosolids. Mrs. Keller, would you like to lead off this conversation?
Well, I read an article
Okay.
that talked about issues with the company that I believe that we're using. It's Renergy, correct?
Correct.
And neighbor issues, and I know that Mr. Holman has talked to us about perhaps that relationship is not secure right now, depending on what happens with their own business plan.
Sure. So, yes, it is still up in the air. We don't know which way they're going to go. Our contacts at the county uses them as well. Much more product taken to them than we have. They also have no idea where it's going to go. They just entered it in.
Well, maybe just perhaps
Yeah.
back up and explain what it is that they
Well,
do for us.
sure,
In terms
so-
of dewatering and that whole
Sure.
process.
So biosolids, if you know what they are the end result of what we are taking out of the water. You know, we treat the water, we put the clean stuff in the river. This is the not clean stuff that we have left over. It's not poop. It's not feces. This is a biosolid. It is a vast differently product. This is a nutrient-rich cake, if you will. By the time we're done, it looks like a little bit wetter. This is what fertilizer is made of. I mean, when you go to a Class A facility and buy fertilizer, it's this dried heavily. Land applying this product has been what has been done for 50 years. It's not a new thing. 55% of all biosolids in the country are land applied. It just is what you do. In some areas, California, it's not my favorite state, but California, many parts of Canada, it's actually, you're penalized if you take stuff like this to a landfill. It's seen as a waste. The US in the last 100 years has lost half of its topsoil. This is how we are supposed to be reinvigorating the soil. But as far as Renergy practices, they are getting complaints. They have had some EPA violations. They are still, at the moment, certified by the state to operate. I can't weigh in on if they're doing things right or not because I'm not the regulating agency. I am just operating with the things I have around me. We have started putting together alternates in case, maybe contingencies, in case they are no longer there. I will tell you that it will be vastly different if we have to fall onto a landfill contingency. And while I'm glad we have them there, so say for Renergy, I'm gonna give you the simplest numbers I can. I have all the math here, but for Renergy, we're about $265,000 a year to get rid of our sludge. If we were to start going to a landfill, it would be more in the neighborhood of $575. So we're looking at a difference of over $300,000 if we were to solely go to a landfill. And while I'm glad we have that contingency there or that backup plan, I don't foresee a landfill as being the proper way to use it. It is an asset, it's a commodity, and I think if Renergy goes away, this would be short term. We will be finding a better way to do it. I was actually at a biosolids workshop all day today down in Lewis Center working with other professionals, just trying to come up with, what's our next best step. I got a lot of ideas today that I'm gonna start working with, and that's what I can say about that. But as far as Renergy is concerned, I mean, yes, we're still going to them. That is at council's will to always change the direction we operate. and that's fine if you don't feel in line with what they're doing, but what I will say is the theory behind what they're doing is solid. They're taking it, they're digesting it to get energy out of it, and then they're land applying it for the nutrients that it can add to the soil. If they are getting infractions from the EPA, that's,
No, I mean, my personal opinion on it is they're a third-party vendor and not really, we don't have control over what they're doing in their own personal business plan. And for our business plan, this seems like it makes a lot of sense. Just want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that, all of us
Absolutely.
keeping an eye on that situation, because that could end up affecting us.
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's something definitely to keep in the forefront of our minds.
And I'm sure whatever EPA violations they have going on, they're actively working to correct them, because their business plan
Yeah.
depends on them being in compliance as well.
Right, I agree. And Tom, I know you've had a number of conversations with the Overfields. I don't know if.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to work through these issues. It's not easy. It's a land use that a lot of the budding property owners are concerned with, and it's not
Mhm.
uncommon. And it seems to have gotten more attention here in the last year or so, and hopefully they can work through the issues. But if they can't, we'll have to come back to you with what our options would be. And I don't know if we could create our own digester on our site, but
I don't know if
there
we'd
would
want
be
that in the
folks
city,
who'd
but-
said that might be an appropriate location, but
Right.
these are, anyway, that,
Yeah.
we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yep. And I believe that was proposed at one point.
Yeah, and I don't know so right now we de-water this,
Mhm.
and it's transported up there, and that's.
Right, so at the moment, we use a belt filter press to take what is liquid and get as much of that solids out of it. We can get to 17 or 18% solids right now, which is actually very impressive in my mind for a belt filter press. One of the things we need very soon, though, is replacement of our belt filter press. It is extremely old. We're currently buying repair parts for it off of eBay because everything is discontinued on it. One of the things we'll be doing is testing different technologies at that time and seeing what we can do. I know when I was at the county, my first project with the county was installing a centrifuge dewatering unit for them, and we were getting numbers closer to 22 or so percent. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a huge difference in water weight. That is less water. You're paying for less liquid to be taken to, say, a landfill or to Renergy than the solids, and the more of that you can get out, the better. And it's a big savings. So that'll be coming up very soon. That's just another factor or another gear in the whole equation there. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Wastewater collections. Maintenance item is the only one I really called out for discussion here. Between the two line items, we've got several repairs needed on the building over there. They work out of what used to be Public Works' building there on the Cherry Street campus. We need a number of repairs such as insulation replaced. It's just a metal frame, metal building. We need some insulation replaced, a few new garage doors, things like that. I think the garage doors were $2,500 each, and we're gonna do 3 of them next year. And then into the equipment, the line items there are meant, not because we always know what they're going to be, but say like, for example, I'm gonna use the jet truck. The jet truck has $15,000 that we allocate that every year. Our engine just blew up on the jet truck about a month ago, and we just got the repair bill back on Tuesday. It's $40,000. So, yeah, the truck is 7 years old. With the hours, it's more of an hours thing, not a miles thing. With the hours, if it were driving that many hours at 60 miles per hour, it has about 200,000 miles on it. So, on one hand, I hate it, but this is,
What does the new one cost if the repairs $40,000?
Well, it's a whole new engine. The truck
Oh, it's the
itself,
engine, okay.
yeah, it's the full,
Okay,
big,
gotcha.
yeah, semi type,
Okay.
yeah. But those are the items called out there. And then for the stormwater department, so as far as stormwater is concerned, projects-wise, that was all covered in the CIP. So what I wanted to do was just highlight one of the things that you'll see out of the budget line item, within professional services being one of the bigger items in just the normal budget of stormwater. you see the call out for MS4 engineering services. That's a $25,000 call out. I don't know if you necessarily have, ever get detailed information on what that line item is going towards. So what that really is, so our MS4 engineering services, that stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. Basically, that is why we get to put water straight into the river, and we don't have to take everything off the streets and from the storm drains and go to the plant. We're separating the sources. And that's very important because if all that water always had to go to the treatment plant, our treatment plant would need to be about 5 times bigger. This is the MS4 is a permit through the EPA, and it takes certain criteria that we have to meet every single year to keep the permit. There's about 7 different sections within that permit, but the big ones are public outreach, so our educational things, cleanups, storm drain labeling. The Now Festival counts towards our meeting of the MS4 permit, as well as the ways in which our watershed coordinator enforces our permit. Dry weather screenings, in the summer you'll see her walking up and down the river in waders. She's making sure that nobody's illicitly discharging into the river. These are storm drains. They shouldn't be putting water in the river unless it's raining. So she catches at least 3 or 4 illicit discharges a year during her hikes up and down the river. Again, shouldn't be an M2, right? She needs promoted on there. And then track outs. Say we've had a lot of rain and Sims has had a lot of people going in and out and there's a lot of mud on the road. She'd be the person usually who calls them and says, hey, you're not doing a good job. You should be controlling what you're putting out, because all of that goes into the storm drains and all that goes to the river, and these are the things she's enforcing. For her 2019 cleanup, I thought it was good stats there. She had 74 people volunteering. That's all word of mouth. That's her going, hey guys, come help me. And she gets a lot of interaction from the community. She spends a lot of time with her education. She goes twice a year to the Stratford Education Center and teaches 3rd graders and 2nd graders about watershed theory and principle and what happens with storm drains. But with those 74 volunteers, they got over 2,000 pounds of trash, 12 tires. This is all out of the Olentangy River, by the way. You can see people pulling out shopping carts, and it's I think it's a great use of our stormwater funds, is to really take care of the one natural asset we have within that river. And our path to improvement. That basically is just touching on the 2 below expectation comments I put. And again, the path forward on that is our project execution, is upping that. It's adjustments to the organizational chart. It's the addition of a project manager. And I really think that's going to be a big boon to our CIP completion. Any questions?
It's not necessarily a question, it's more of a cross-departmental thing I'd like to raise. I don't know what to call it. So when we look at leaf collection in the city, it's done basically at the residents, whatever they do with the leaves. They hire somebody, they bag them, they have them picked up, whatever it might be. I tend to notice we get a lot of clogged sewers because people don't pick them up, they wash down, they clog, they get flooding. So I don't know what the cost is for repairs in that, but I think it would be worth talking about at some point what the cost of leaf pickup is versus the cost to repairs in sewers, man hours to clean out streets, things like that.
So we do leaf pickup. So the bags that people are putting out,
I mean
vacuum,
yes.
sucking up to the street.
So that
versus-
is a conversation actually more for Bill and I at the same time, but
Right.
we've had these discussions many times. There are, and he's actually put out a good paper on it for,
It would, about a year ago after we had
Yeah.
the flooding, and Drew had mentioned this to me earlier.
Okay.
We were gonna update that.
Yeah.
But it is a program, it's a level of service, but it also is something that.
And there are different theories as well. When you're having people pile them up near the road, there's always the chance for them to wash into the storm sewers, where if you're expecting them to put them in the bags and then we come pick up the bags, there's less likelihood for a rain event between them raking and us picking up, of them going somewhere we don't want them. So there are different methods. We've chosen I guess so far, we had chosen a method. You know, it's always up for debate and cross-examination.
I know this isn't an issue for the budget this year, it's a longer term thing. to
Yeah,
talk about,
absolutely.
but Just something I wanted to raise.
Sure.
We can, at least we just make a note, we can
Mhm.
get that report and at least provide that to Drew.
Great.
Any other questions, comments? I think your department does a great job.
Thank you very
so,
much. Appreciate that. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Kyle.
Uh-oh. You're in the hot seat, buddy.
Perfect.
Hello, good evening, Madam Mayor and members of City Council. Unfortunately, our HR manager, Jessica Feller, was unable to make it this evening, so I'm here to tell all the good news about HR and DAS, so here we go. I guess I just wanted to start off to say that I'm a firm believer that you win with people at the end of the day. And HR more historically was looked at as more of, you know, hiring, firing, those type of activities. But I think in today's world, not only for our organization, just in general, that they're taking on new projects, new activities, and focus on culture and employee training and development. And the budget will show that they're starting to expand themselves, not only as, hey, you know, we're here to help you with your benefits, but, you know, we want to help you grow and achieve your goals. And I think at the end of the day, I know that our HR team does a wonderful job in hiring. Ultimately, you know, Tom's leadership on kind of signing off on all of our employees, but I'm really encouraged by not only the work that HR does, but our leadership team in general and our people. So great way to kind of highlight. Here's our bits and pieces of our HR team. There's Jessica Feller on the far left. Lori is actually, this is kind of an outside of the box activity that they did. These students are high school students in the bottom right picture. They've indicated that they are not necessarily looking to pursue a 4-year degree. So we brought them in to educate them about careers within the city. And HR put together a nice video highlighting staff and talking about not just working for the city as a job, but more of a passion toward public service. And when I think of our organization, just like the private sector, we have to be an employer of choice. So we have to position ourselves to, you know, tell our story and say that it's not just, you know, I work in public utilities or I work in finance, but, you know, you're serving the community. So it's definitely an honorable profession. And the earlier that we can get to, you know, young folks within Delaware, I think the better off we're positioned. In the top right, that's the first cohort to go through our management development program. Kind of speaking to training and development, this is the first time that we've taken on this leadership program, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback, and the budget will show that we have, we're going to renew this program, and it's really giving what I see to be our next generation leaders the tools, whether in leadership training, change management, and some of those skills that you know, you hope people kind of pick up organically, but you really have to kind of pull them out of their divisions and build kind of that next cohort of who could be the next generation of directors and department heads across the city. A couple of just high-level highlights from DAS. They're in charge of, you know, the recruiting and hiring, but just within this last year, they've had more high-level recruitments. Our CIO in the back there joined the team at the beginning of 2019. They're currently in the process to replace Dean as a finance director, very, you know, important role to the city. Myself, not very important, but I'm
Waiting
here.
for you.
The assistant prosecutor, or I'm sorry, the prosecutor, actually most of the prosecutor's office this year.
Three quarters of them, yeah.
That's right, that's right. Community affairs, the pictures actually that you're seeing in the drone pictures of the wastewater treatment plant were taken by Dale, who we're proposing to elevate to a full-time position. Like Sean mentioned, our economic development coordinator, and a number of hires, new hires within the police department. So needless to say, they're a pretty busy unit. And outside of the more traditional HR type of activities, I feel like there's a lot of good movement being made when it comes to employee wellness, internal communications, culture. We had I guess a first of its kind of family outing at the Laner Farms, which was really fun, low cost, but I think those things matter. You know, building trust amongst one another just kind of opens up lines of communication and can benefit the city as a whole. There are around 300 full-time employees with the city, and during the peak summer months, we hire an additional 60 seasonal staff. So this is the org chart. City manager, myself, and then Jessica Feller, as I mentioned, is our human resources manager. Administrative services specialist is Whitney Faust, and then Lori Diaz is our human resources coordinator. We are proposing to add a seasonal intern for recruiting purposes. As I mentioned, there's 60 seasonal employees that ramp up for 8 months of the year, but the addition of this staff member will allow our HR department to focus on some of these other efforts with training, which takes a lot of thought and effort. We're also actually not this Friday, but a week from this Friday, embarking upon an internal leadership retreat, which Jessica and our team has been instrumental in, taking our around 40 top-level leaders within the organization and talking about, you know, a vision for our own staff. How can we get better with internal communication, project management skills, and also inviting in a trainer who's going to speak on non-routine leadership. And essentially what that is taking a look at some of the studies that are out there saying in the coming years, a lot of routine work will be automated, whether by robots or by artificial intelligence. So how can we equip our leaders to be leaders of the non-routine work and work through complexity in an ever-changing and faster-changing environment? Sounds like job stability for all of us, but it's a crazy world, and we're doing our best to just kind of prepare our leaders for it.
So when are you doing that?
So that's a week from tomorrow,
So 13.
the 13th.
Where are you doing this at?
OWU.
Capping it off with the holiday party. At the
Yeah. So we'll get at each other, and then we can hug each other on the back end. We'll be sure to share feedback from that. I'm really excited about it. One of the exercises we're doing, I borrowed from a previous stop. It's called the newspaper exercise, and you're envisioning what the headline of the Delaware Gazette would read in 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years. And then from there,
There won't be a Delaware Gazette. Sorry.
the trending on Twitter in 5 years,
There you
and but really getting people to think, what do we want to be, as a community, and asking the question of, the way that we're configured now and the way that we operate, can we achieve those goals? If not, what hurdles are currently in our way? And then also, what can we put in place today so in 5 years we're not saying we wish we would have done this? So it's a neat exercise. It's kind of an idea to get people just starting to think a little bit differently about that stuff. We'll hope it goes well, and we'll be happy to share kind of some feedback on that. So back to this management development program, for 2020, we're proposing that we bring along a new cohort of next generation leaders, along with creating some training for our top level leadership. And just to kind of point out from a succession planning standpoint, there's two graphs that you'll see. The one on the left is from 2009 and the one on the right is 2019. And it's just showing the shift in generations of the workplace. As you can see, there was 42% baby boomers in 2009, and now that has dwindled to 24%, where now Generation Y and Millennial are kind of the dominating workforce within our staff. And then even, I guess, the next Generation Z is coming online, and I'm sure as everybody can attest, it's always just interesting navigating the different generations, and it's fun. So this is just showing, we recently kind of beefed up our recruiting efforts, and we're utilizing online recruiting for our different positions. So in 2019, we had 27,000 visits to our recruiting page. I think that's a good indicator that we still are an employer of choice and people do want to be a part of the Delaware team. Part of the reason for those boosted numbers, we worked with, I believe it is recruiting.com, and through search engine optimization, they're able to direct more traffic. So when somebody Googles Delaware, our career site will come up to, you know, one of the top links, because I think like only 1% of people make it to like page 2. So if you're on page 3, you're basically non-existent. And then people that kind of nerd out on marketing things, the click-through rate. So that's not just people that are seeing the link and clicking on it, but then actually clicking onto a job. So if you take 27,000 and you have 4,100, it's about a 15% click-through rate. And in just general marketing, around 2% is a good number. So that means that people aren't just, you know, searching it out willy-nilly. I mean, they're legitimately looking at our website and interested in working for the city. A couple of new initiatives that we have going on. I'm sure everybody's heard about the ERP system. I think that's going to take up a lot of people's time. I mean, it's really, you know, enterprise resource planning, so it's across the entire city. Specifically, HR is involved with the human resources information system implementation to begin in 2020. We'll have our new finance director on board, working closely with our IT department, HR, city manager's office. It's going to be a pretty intensive but a beneficial program, I think, to the entire city, and essentially getting all of our different systems talking to one another and not having to create disparate Excel spreadsheets, you know, for analysis. So when council has questions, we could probably more readily provide the data for that. Again, back to succession planning, training. I think it's just a very important aspect to any organization. And I saw a couple quotes. One is, what if we train them and they leave? But worse off, what if we don't train them and they stay? So I think if we're equipping our folks with the best abilities to be great leaders, hopefully they're here to stay. But, you know, also we understand that, you know, some people will get the tools and, you know, the timing's not right, and, you know, maybe we'll make the next director to our partner, you know, down the road, and then just create kind of that brand of development and attract, you know, the best talent. We're also going to engage on a wage and comparison analysis. We haven't done one of these for a number of years now, but they'll kind of comb through the job descriptions and ensure that they are classified properly, but also take a look at our peer cities to just make sure that we're, you know, competitive given, you know, the actual job duties and educational requirements. We are in the early stages of our health insurance plan design review. 2020 will be kind of that year to analyze what our current insurance plan is and what the potential new insurance plan will be. to go live in 2021. That's DAS working closely with our finance department, legal, the city manager's office. So we had a good meeting with our health insurance broker, USI, earlier this week, and we're going to proceed down that pathway to see, you know, what's the best case scenario, not only for our employees, but as our city as a whole. I'm sure everybody's aware that health insurance costs just continue to be on the rise. So, you know, how can we be proactive about cost mitigation, but ultimately, you know, taking pride and giving our employees a rich health insurance plan, but exploring what options are out there, both from a wellness standpoint and a cost-sharing standpoint. So that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have at this point.
Questions? Must have done a really good job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take a 5-minute break.
Sure,
Anybody else?
that's fine. Take a 5-minute break.
Are you gonna go to that?
I don't.
It is, yeah, it is.
Are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
It's fine.
Mine's here somewhere.
Can we hit the gavel?
4 times.
Yes.
We'll begin again. Mr. Dave Eflin, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. We appreciate this opportunity to present the proposed budget for planning and community development. Obviously, I present maps and pictures and lots of that kind of stuff to you on almost a bi-weekly basis. We've been pretty busy over the course of the last couple of weeks. So my presentation is either stolen pictures or pretty dull and just PowerPoint. So, but we do have a lot of initiatives that we're looking to do that are pretty major. And I just want to acknowledge and appreciate my leadership team. Jerry Warner and Lance Schultz are joining us here tonight, and they can help add any context or answer questions that you may have. But as a leadership team, we've been spending a lot of time this year when we're not doing everything else that we do, talking about what we can do for the department and our community long term. And we really arrived at kind of 3 pillars of change. The existing population, the base population, is much higher than it's ever been, obviously, and climbing. The development and redevelopment across all types. You heard Sean's presentation tonight. So it's not just residential, although we spent a lot of time talking about that, but it's commercial, mixed use, industrial is significant and likely to continue at a significant pace. And then succession planning, which I went into with a presentation about a week ago in some detail of very highly experienced staff. We also have major efforts that we are trying to accomplish as well. The comprehensive plan being the primary one, followed more than likely by a need to rewrite the zoning code. Those two are incredibly impactful in terms of hours and the benefits to our community long term. So we arrived with those 3 pillars of change in mind as what to do. Well, we really need to address our basic capacity within the department. I think that's just abundantly clear at this point. We need to attempt to attract new talent, retain the talent that we have. We need to address burnout, sustainability, from myself on down through everybody within our department. And we arrived at a decision that we really needed to reorganize our department in a way that made sense moving forward and long term. Or as Jerry Warner likes to put it, how do we just get to even? And he's very right about that. So our new org chart looks, rather than kind of 2 buckets, planning and zoning and buildings and inspections, we really feel that it's important to tilt up a 3rd division of code enforcement on its own. And that really, everything we are proposing fits at least one of the pillars that I just went over, generally 2 or 3 of those pillars. And they all fit together in terms of what we're proposing here. But to have 2 full-time code enforcement officers for a community our size is nothing new for you to hear from me. But to put it in its own division, really take the next several years, as long as we really have Jerry, who started code enforcement in the city of Delaware, okay, and can download his information. I have some experience in that regard, and Lance does as well, so that we can have a clear chain of command, but also give it the proper weight and attention that effort deserves. And all of you have sent me, with the exception of Drew yet in a couple of weeks, code enforcement items through the years, as you know, and they can get very complicated and complex, increasingly so. So the personnel chart, we think we can do this by adding just 1 in head count. And I'm going to move along from that because I'm sure you've seen it, but we'll go over it here in a little more detail. By adding a building inspector too, this is the rank of our inspectors in the building division. That would give us a fourth inspector. Obviously, we have a couple of inspectors who are well within the window of retirement now, and adding a certified inspector would be important to our capacity and our succession planning and servicing the overall community. So all three of the pillars are really addressed by that. Code enforcement officer, I just remarked on, and that individual, we have the job description, we have that. For code enforcement officer 2, that would be essentially the head of that division, but that division really would work as a team with direction by me, but day-to-day direction by Lance and Jerry, because the work involves all of that. We would look to promote and reclassify our zoning officer, Jordan Selnick, who has just done an outstanding job, gone through the management training program that Kyle laid out for you, to development planner. That's part of that retaining talent portion that I just went over. And we would look to reclassify, promote our administrative assistant to permit clerk expediter. We've done a classification study with DAS. We have a job description in that regard, and we're ready to move forward with that initiative. We think that, we simply just don't utilize traditional administrative assistant services anymore. The jobs become much more technical. Frankly, most communities that you look at throughout the country now, in departments like ours, you have a permit clerk or permit expediter fulfilling that role. And we think that we can also reorient some of the job duties and give that individual, again, retaining talent, but give that individual some additional opportunity for training that's more technical. We would leave unfilled then, or leave unfilled the zoning officer position. That is one that we did request as well. For us, it's a pipe, so we increased the inspection pipe. We left the zoning pipe kind of this big. You still have an opportunity for a little clog there, because it's a linear type function when you're doing plan review and inspection. But we understand competing resources and needs of the city overall. But don't be surprised if we continue to ask for that with respect to the manager's budgets for future years. And then an elimination of the part-time code enforcement officer position. So that's really taking that and making it a full-time position. You can look at it that way with the code enforcement officer position too. Significant line items, it's really the wages and benefits related to the reorganization and those personnel items that I just went over. That's why the number is higher in this year's budget, or in 2020's proposed budget rather than this year's budget. The other PCD line items that we're in control of remain at the same levels. There were some additional IT money and garage rotary and that sort of thing. We do use a lot of IT services, and part of that is to be as efficient as we can. We really appreciate our IT department and everything that they bring to us. They have made us much more efficient in what we do, and we continue to look forward to working with them. Fully support Susie's proposal for additional help with respect to the CMMS analyst position as well. That we find that we would get a lot of utility out of that. So new initiatives, moving forward to 2020. Again, quoting Jerry, if we're just getting to even, new initiatives are a little hard to come by. But also listening to Vice Mayor Schaefer, we have 4 bullets up here. Completion of the comprehensive plan, which will be a significant work item for the first half of 2020 for you as well, council members. And then really spending some time reviewing a zoning code rewrite, preparing what a proposal for that cost with consultant services might look like, more than likely heading into a 2021 budget and process to try to get a zoning code that's in alignment with our new comprehensive plan priorities and principles. A lot of things we talk about with a lot of cases with you every 2 weeks. Part of the reorganization into 3 distinct divisions is going to require us to spend a lot of time in-house in our own department with training and also living into that new divisional process and thinking about our succession planning and really trying to carve out time that isn't just plan reviews and inspections and code enforcement, but is inside our own team with distributing workload in a little bit different way, and also really distributing the knowledge of combined hundreds of years in Delaware throughout those divisions and new employees and also existing employees. We do think that will free up some time, though, of my time, of Lance's time, of Jerry's time, by tilting up that code enforcement division as well. But that will take some time for us to live into that new process. And then the city manager put this in his message to you with respect to the budget. We are working with his office and Alicia to prepare potential fee increases. We haven't increased fees since 2014 was the last time we did it. Obviously, we're proposing some new positions that cost some money, and we are one of the few departments that does bring in revenue, but we will have something to you within the first quarter of 2020. Right now, we have met as a team, leadership team, on a draft of that, just internally, and there would be a fairly significant overall revenue increase, assuming our development rates continue, and even assuming our 10 or 15-year average development rate. But not prepared to go into those details yet tonight. We'll do that in the first quarter. Wasn't 3 minutes, but it was pretty fast considering all that. So happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Do you have an idea what other cities around us charge for fees? I keep hearing that our fees are high. I don't care. I mean, I care, but I don't. And now you're talking about raising them. Can you kind of do an analysis or pull what other fees are?
Well, we did that in 2014, Madam Mayor. It is a substantial amount of work. We could do it again. My position has been, I don't think on our fee structure and our costs that it's really necessary to justify the fee increase. And again, I can go into details of that when we present that to you. I hear that from developers as well, but primarily that complaint, it has not been directed at PCD fees, which are pretty much, for plan review, they're direct kind of fees for plan review and inspection services. I hear that complaint as an overall fee burden to the city. I go to pull a house permit and there's capacity fees, it's about $11,000 per house, and then there's 4 impact fees right now we've been talking about, maybe 5 impact fees or increasing impact fees and that sort of thing, and you all will have to discuss that as well. And then on each house, there's about $1,500 of planning and community development fees for a house that amounts to usually about 30 to 32 inspections plus your plan review. That's darn good value. We'll be right there in the regional average with respect to the fees that I control, or at least propose to you. You control them ultimately. So I feel confident and comfortable that we can be right into, not out of line.
Okay. Any other questions?
I don't have questions, just a comment. You guys do a great job, but if there's extra money, I'm all for putting more people in that office because
I appreciate
we
that.
continue to see more and more development, and we need to have the staff to keep up with that. And so, if there's any way to do it, I'm in favor of doing it.
I appreciate that, Vice Mayor, and I know Jerry and Lance do as well.
Anything else?
Everybody's burning that.
I know, it is hot in here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, discussions. Does anybody have anything else they want to talk about?
So just real quickly, we totaled up, I had Alicia total up the streets in red, if you will. That's $3.1 million. So that's what all of those streets that Bill identified that aren't in the 5-year plan would cost. So even, if you looked at averaging that over 5 years, it's about $600,000 a year that you'd have to add if you were going to try to do it,
1/5, 1/5, and so on. And there's about $4.8 million already. That's what that 5-year funded plan represents, so.
What'd you say?
You can already do so much
Yes. Mm-hmm.
without an additional revenue stream. It's hard to do more.
Okay. Did we ever hear back from Mr. Hoffman?
I did. He did send his apologies. He, had a little bit of a issue at home that he was
Okay.
dealing with.
Okay.
Got kinda stuck in traffic and just needed to get home.
Okay.
Well, I'll make a motion to excuse his absence.
That's what I was gonna try to.
Second.
So a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Ms. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
And he did send his apologies, and I was meant to tell you that earlier.
That's okay. I was just thinking about it. Well, it looks like we'll be able to get through, they'll have any questions we had on Monday night, and then we'll have finance, we'll have Lee, and we'll have Darren. And,
Mine's about 3-hour presentation.
well, you better shrink it down then, Bryce. I would propose that we stay Monday night and get it done. The agenda doesn't look very bad right now, as opposed to coming back that following Thursday. Is everybody in agreement?
Which following Thursday is that, the?
The 12th, we wanna get rid of the 12th.
Okay,
That's my
but
goal.
the year-end meeting is the 19th?
Still,
19th.
yeah, and that remains.
Okay, and that's the year-end,
Yeah,
the supplemental, the one we normally.
adopting the budget, state plans, everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So as long as we're in all agreement, we'll get it done Monday night. Okay. And then on January 6th, which will be the first Monday of the new year, we're gonna do a work session, 6:30. And we're gonna hear from the Delaware Noun Group. We're gonna get a presentation on the corridor of 23.
This is the study that we sent out
Right.
a couple of weeks ago.
And Elaine, I'd like you to also invite the planning commission. And a lot of it's not gonna affect us, but what does affect us is what's in the city, but it'd be nice to know what they're looking at the rest of the way. So if you can invite them, and I just think that'd be nice.
And Tom, is MKSK gonna be here to present?
I'm not sure. I did, I reached out to Bob Lamb. He's able to, and I know that Councilwoman Keller had asked about Mr. Cutler. He's one of the members of that group. I think he's the chair. I'm not sure, but, so.
They did the study and it.
Yeah, they actually were
present-
contracted to do
Yeah,
it, but it was
yeah,
the,
right.
yeah.
So
No, but it was-
who is Delaware Now?
It's on the second page of that report. It's a bunch of businesses, it's the county, it's the Chamber of Commerce, there's a bunch of people that have all come together that funded that study. But the county was a big part of that.
And I think it was funded by the community, what I'm trying to say.
The foundation
Yeah.
funded it through a fund that they set up, I would presume through donations or some, contributions of some kind, I'm not sure.
I guess my concern is having planning commission and city council give up an evening that we could be at home to come listen to a group that we're not really sure what their purpose is or where their funding is, tell us a whole lot about something that we already have a PowerPoint for, and just not really sure what the purpose of this is.
I'd like to hear where they're going with it, and I'd like to know what's going on beyond the city and how they're planning out 23, and I think we should all be involved in it.
Who's planning 23?
How this study that SKM did, what they're looking at.
It's ultimately up to the county, and the county's plan is to, a lot of it involves the township, some of it involves the city, not a whole lot really. But the county's plan is to try to get these different political entities to work together to look at some of the suggestions that are made. The horse is already out of the barn, so to speak, on 23, because we've got curb cuts everywhere and traffic jams everywhere. The whole idea is what can we do to improve that corridor? And the good part about the different jurisdictions coming together to work on that is there's gonna be another study on the 36, 37 corridor, and we were ahead of the curve on that one, so hopefully we do more planning and do a better job of, as that grows, as that corridor grows, of getting it right the first time.
So,
It's a pretty impressive study. MKS did a good job.
I've read the study. I guess anytime that we have a study that's produced by anyone, it's always important to look at who funded the study and what methodologies were used, and was public input gathered. We gave, as far as I know, as elected officials, no input in this study. I don't know that our constituents were asked to give input in this study. It seems like we're giving an awful lot of our airtime to a study that we didn't really participate in. I also have concerns about the Delaware Now group. I just asked and received information today about who is Delaware Now. There's absolutely zero information on any website. Their meetings are not open to the public. I got 1 page of information only on who Delaware Now is. And who they are, Joe Smiley is the owner of a land strategies company. Skip Weiler is the president of a commercial real estate company. David Stage is the director of acquisitions for a real estate development company. Franz Geiger is a real estate development attorney. And Ron Sabatino is a real estate developer. So they are who produced this study. Real estate developers to tell us, I'm not sure what, for an entire work session.
I think developers are usually the ones that bring the plans forward anyways.
But
So
it's
I'd like to hear what they have to say, what their thoughts are.
It's not just though what their thoughts are, it's a study on how we should develop that impacts our community. The president of Delaware Now is a real estate attorney, and in his firm's description of what they do, the very first line says, when you're launching a new home building project, nothing can grind progress to a halt faster than having your plans rejected by a government entity. It takes lawyers with a unique set of knowledge and skills to help builders and developers navigate regulatory and political hurdles. That's the president of Delaware Now. In the study, it says one of their goals is to educate the community about the benefits of quality, balanced development and to build support for land use changes and approvals via meetings, social media, press releases, posters, and mailers. I have an issue. I have an issue that seems that there's an agenda and we're donating a work session to that agenda.
Well, they made a presentation to the county and they want to come and make one to us.
And we don't have to accept any of it. I mean, we can listen to it, decide that it isn't of any value to us, but it's at least worth hearing what they got to say. You know, I found the presentation to be informative and pretty impressive.
What does everybody else think?
I think I'm in favor of hearing from them. I think that anytime that there's a private organization that has a close vested interest to the outcome of land use decisions, I think their end goal is going to be the bottom line of their company versus the public good. So I think that needs to be weighed in that, but I think that it's at least, like, reading through it, there were some things I thought were useful for us to consider. I think it just needs to be taken through the lens of, this is a group of companies that are looking to make money out of the end result of whatever governmental decisions are made in the region. So if the good elements of the study and the bad elements of the study need to be taken into account and hopefully corroborated or reproduced by additional study of some kind.
But who else would do a study besides developers? I mean, we don't have the time nor the money to do one. Yes, that's, who else would do it?
And I think that would come as part of the comprehensive plan process, things like that. Like, what do we as a city want out of things versus what do developers themselves want? And they might be the same thing, but.
I mean, I guess the other issue I have with this study also is that there's projects in there like the bypass project that, you know, we have no funding source for, that has dotted lines through people's properties.
It's been there for 20 years, that bypass.
Right, but there's lines through our citizens' properties in this study where they're making recommendations that we know we have no funding for, that we know won't go anywhere. I can read their study, and I have read it, so what's the expectation, what will come of this? Hearing what they have to say, can't we just read their study? I'm not understanding the purpose of.
You don't wanna have any dialogue with them and talk to them?
About,
What
they planned on planting trees along 23 and making it a nice looking corridor. There's a plan for a bypass that we have no money to build. ODOT handles access management issues. I'm not sure what the work that we're going to be doing in a work session is actually doing. But it's helping them further their goal of getting the public used to land use changes. That's one of their listed agendas.
Well, I'd like to have it, so it's, George, what do you think? You haven't said anything?
If there's value to be obtained beyond what is in the study, they're gonna come and just tell us what the study is, and we already have the study, then it's a waste of time. But if there's, where's the value add? Because, if I spend a couple hours reading the study, then why do I wanna come and listen to them regurgitate the thing for another couple hours? So that's where I am. I do believe, I think Lisa has a good point, that, obviously, they have a very vested interest in trying to move forward with their, with, as Drew says, but at the end of the day, they gotta put food on the table. How they put food on the table is through development. But I think the, maybe the other lens that we should consider is are we being fair, and or are we setting precedent as to somebody else wants to come and give us a presentation?
We are city council, we should be listening.
I agree. But we need to, and again, we just need to be very equitable and very fair in who we're giving and setting aside work session time for. At the end of the day, that's my concern.
If somebody else comes forward and says they wanna do a presentation, I'm fine with that. I think that's what our job is to listen.
It is. If there's value, but to Lisa's point, it's like, is there additional value outside of just having the report?
But it's just a report, it's a recommendation, but I wanna even know what's going beyond the city. I wanna know what the whole plans are for 23. Right now, you've got traffic light after traffic light after traffic light. I wanna know what their plans are, because somebody should have thought of that a long time ago.
Yeah, but whatever their plans are isn't really gonna matter, cause it all comes down to ODOT. So it's whatever, really, if you wanna know what the plans are for the 23 corridor, talk to ODOT.
Yes.
They're the ones that are gonna control it.
It's more than just the roadway. It's looking at how different types of development impact traffic. It's more than just the roadway itself. My thought is, as decision makers, the more information we have, the better we can be in making decisions. We don't have to give in to anybody's plans if we don't want to. But the more information we have, the more we understand about trends, the better informed we are when it comes to making these kind of decisions. So, again, I've heard the study. I think it's a fairly informative study. I think hearing the people who actually conducted the study can provide background information. I think it would be useful to have that information for an hour or so of our time.
Do we know what their presentation time frame is? How much time are they going to?
Probably whatever we tell them, because we haven't got back from SKM yet.
Who's presenting?
I hope that somebody from MKSK can do it, because they're the ones that actually conducted the study. I'm trying to think how long it was when they presented to the Finance Authority Board.
We asked Bob Lamb. Bob Lamb is with the county. The county helped fund the study.
Yeah, it seemed like it was under an hour, but I'd give an hour.
There's a lot there.
It's a lot of information.
There's a lot of recommendations, and many of these are related to the corridor, which ODOT has studied before.
Will ODOT be coming to the meeting?
We could invite them. We could
Were
invite
they
them.
part of the process?
I don't know if they were they were definitely consulted as a stakeholder as part of this, and I think if I'm ODOT, I value something like this because at least it shows that there's some attempt to provide a more uniform approach to land use along a corridor that is increasingly becoming choked by volume. And if we're gonna add 500,000 to 1 million people in this region in the next, by 2050, unless we say we're just not gonna accept that, we've gotta figure out a way to manage it better. So it starts with studies, whether there's studies funded by organizations like this, or whether there was a regional council of governments that funded a study. A lot of these recommendations are things we've seen before in terms of making the corridor look better, backage roads, a lot of that stuff. So I think it's just getting more and more, there's more and more concern about it, I think. And we're a major player because of where we are in the county and the growth that's here. So there's no obligation on the part of city council except to listen and hear maybe what, a little more as Councilwoman Keller has asked, who is Delaware Now? What are what's the genesis of this, and where's it going? And what's our role in that? And do we have a role? I know Orange Township is interested, obviously Liberty Township, any jurisdiction along that corridor has an interest in this, but we all know it happens right now on a township basis and a city basis. There's not as much coordination. So.
I'm always willing to listen. I think that we have public comment at the beginning of our meeting where anybody's able to come and tell us anything that we want. But in order to get me in to an extra meeting on a Monday night, I need to see value, and I don't see the work that we're doing other than being spoken to about a presentation we can read.
Well, I think it's worthwhile, so I've set the meeting, so I just hope you come. You have questions, you can ask them that night.
So who will be presenting?
He's working on getting.
Well, Bob Lamb
Bob
he's
Lamb's-
agreed, and if you want somebody from the board.
Well, I'm just
there-
curious why Bob Lamb is presenting a study that he didn't commission or work on.
Well, I'm sorry.
Delaware Now commissioned this study, right?
Right, but they were, the study was supported by Delaware County financially, I believe, the
Okay,
folks
but
here. So.
shouldn't a representative from Delaware Now be
Yes, and we can
presenting?
invite Mr. Cutler, and we can invite Mr. Geiger and the others, and
Whoever's here, you can have as many people here as you want. The reason I think it's important for MKSK to present is because they conducted the study and they can provide a lot more background and what went into coming to the conclusions they did. I mean, they're urban planners, that's what their experts had, and regardless of who paid them to do the job, they do what they're professionally trained to do, and I think if MKSK can be here, it'll be a much more useful presentation.
Who did the presentation at finance?
Representatives from MKSK.
Okay.
The
So
reason
can you
Bob
reach out
Lamb's
to them?
involved
Yeah.
is he's the economic development director for the county, and this is basically an economic development project.
if time permitted, I was gonna do some state of the city stuff, but there might not be time, so, depending on.
I'd rather see that.
But,
As long as if a group, Citizens for Responsible Development, wanna come in February, and we have a work session about that too.
It's 12 months, 12 work sessions, we can easily use them.
Okay, well, public heard that, so.
Okay, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned at 9:02.